Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 21st of April of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And the most important and the most interesting updates are coming from Bakhmut. As you can see, there are a lot of icons in this area, and for example, the most interesting icons are above the road 0506. And according to the Russian sources, as a result of clashes in this area, the Russians managed to develop their bridgehead and to cut physically this road. During the day, the Ukrainians made a number of counter-offensive operations trying to push the Russians back, but all those attacks were repulsed by the Russians. I expect that the most massive attack, the most powerful counter-offensive operation, the Ukrainians are going to make during the upcoming night. And if the Russians are able to hold this bridgehead during the next night, then they will be able to encircle Bakhmut completely. So the upcoming night is the most important night in the battle for Bakhmut. This is a very important and very valuable road for the Ukrainians. Their sources are saying that using this road, the Ukrainians were able to support Bakhmut for 60% of entire support of that area. So imagine yourself the value of this road. But this is not the most important part of that success from the Russian side, because taking and cutting the road is very important from one side. But by taking this part of road, the Russians managed to achieve more goals and more benefits from the entire situation. We will discuss this a little bit later. When talking about Bakhmut itself, the Russians are saying that there were a number of updates from the Ukrainian side, that they took a decision to step back from the northern and northeastern part of the western part of Bakhmut. Currently, the Ukrainians are trying to accumulate and move all their forces in the western part of Bakhmut, and I believe that these forces also are preparing themselves before the greatest evacuation operation, because if during the next night the Ukrainians won't be able to unblock Bakhmut through the road 0506, then they will be forced to make another very difficult order, to start evacuation process from the entire western Bakhmut, because they don't have much time to do this. If they are not able to complete this evacuation process or let's say unblocking process by the end of this weekend, then they will be completely encircled and appeared in a cauldron in the western Bakhmut. Very difficult situation. Now let's return back to this battle, to this 0506 road. For these purposes, let's take a look at the Western sources map. This map is not updated, but as a result of those clashes, as a result of the battle for this 0506 road, the Russians managed to establish this bridgehead, and they got the outskirts and the edge of Khromovo. And this is very important. If we take a look at the Russian deployment map, this area was under responsibility of 92nd Mechanized Brigade. We remember this brigade because if you remember a few days ago we discussed that this brigade made a video where they were complaining their commanders, their military authorities, saying that they don't have any support and so on. So as we understand, the Russians found a weak point in Ukrainians' defense. They concentrated this area with artillery fire, missile fire, tank fire, and that forces, the spirit and the will of fight of those forces were broken, and they took a decision to step back, or maybe they were completely defeated or destroyed or something like this, and then the Russians sent their forces and got their positions. For example, today during this day we received another very interesting piece of news, and these news are coming from the territory a little bit to the northwest of this road. Let's go back to the Russian deployment map. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of artillery duels, missiles attacks, drone attacks, they destroyed fuel depot of 17th Tank Brigade, and as you can see, this 17th Tank Brigade is located in the vicinity of Grigorievka, according to the Russian sources, Russian deployment map. If we take a look at the Western deployment map, we can find this brigade almost at the same place. According to the Russian sources, this brigade is located on the Russian side, let's say, of the channel in the vicinity of this forest, but I believe it doesn't matter. These forces, of course, are stretched, this entire brigade, so I believe they control the entire bridgehead in this area. And also the Russians added that as a result of the same attacks and so on, they destroyed and they attacked the positions of 77th Air Mobile Brigade. There are two icons of this brigade in this area, the first one in the vicinity of Grigorievka and the second one in the vicinity of Zelezhnyanskaya. They didn't mention, they didn't give like real information, which of these brigades was under attack. If we take a look at the Western sources deployment map, according to this map, this brigade is located in Bakhmut. I believe that this information is out of date because it's not, but by the way, it's very fresh update dated to March. I'm not sure, but anyway, what does it mean, those attacks against those brigades? If we take a look at the Western sources map, we understand that according to those pieces of news, the Russians were attacking this bridgehead. This bridgehead that located on the north of, let's say, Bogdanovka and north of this 0506 road. They destroyed the fuel depot and the position of that 77th Air Mobile Brigade. That means that from one side, the Russians cleared and take control over the southern flank of some vector of attack, and from the other side they cleared, pinned down and destroyed some possibilities of the forces that located on the northern flank of some direction of attack. So if we try to find the middle line between these two flanks, we understand that possibly the Russians are planning to start development their mission, their attack in direction of Bogdanovka. And this is very reasonable because anyway, the Russians sooner or later need to get the outskirts of the channel, but maybe that was just the attack where the Russians were trying to pin down the Ukrainians and to freeze the reserves that Ukrainians could use, let's say, to stop the Russian progress on the road of 506. Or possibly the Russians are planning to start attack in direction of Bogdanovka, and the same reason they freezed and pinned down the reserves of 17th Tank Brigade and 77th Air Mobile Brigade. So I expect that within the next few days, by the end of this weekend, the Russians are going to make another attempt to take Bogdanovka. And now currently this is possible because the flanks are almost secured from the forces on the north and from the south. Of course, the Russians continue moving inside the Bakhmut along the Victory Strait. They're currently trying to storm the ex-military base in the central part, and of course the Russians are attacking the Ukrainians with a very short, small attacks along the southern streets, trying to force the Ukrainians to get inside of the western part of Bakhmut. Furthermore, this morning the assistant of the head of DPR reported that Bakhmut appeared in Cauldron. Later, the head of DPR reported that there are no Cauldron at all. There are still a lot of things to do before Cauldron appears, but anyway, we're very, very close to this situation. Now let's go to the, before we move to another front lines, the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of clashes along the Donetsk front line, the Ukrainians lost 310 soldiers, 7 armored vehicles and 3 artillery systems. Also 1 fuel depot, as we discussed, of 17th Tank Brigade. Very interesting updates are coming from Crimea. The Russians are saying that during the day the Ukrainians made a number of counter-offensive operations in this area. They were attacking the Russians by 58th Brigade, 95th Brigade and 81st Brigade, trying to regain the lost positions during the previous days. But all those attacks were repulsed. Let's go to the Russian deployment map. So if we take a look at this map, we see that there is a 95th Brigade. This is 95th, this is another part of 95th Brigade, and this is 81st Air Mobile Brigade. This is 95th as well. So we see that all these brigades are located in this area, so we can see that this is very accurate information, and we can believe the maps and the report and so on because they're like almost synchronized. As a result of clashes on the Kupiansk and Liman front line, the Ukrainians lost 115 soldiers, 130 soldiers, and they lost 5 armored vehicles including 1 tank and three artillery systems. Furthermore, the Ukraine lost 2 ammo depots in this area. The Russians are saying that as a result of another day of clashes in this area, they managed to break another rotation process in some towns in this area. And we see that the situation for the Ukrainians are getting worse and worse from day to day on this front line. Now let's go to Donetsk, the capital of DPR, because there are also a lot of very interesting updates. For example, the Russians reported that during the previous 24 hours, another group of Ukrainian soldiers took a decision to save their lives and they surrendered. If you remember, a few days ago, we discussed that some authorities from DPR reported that almost every single day they have from 20 till 60 soldiers who surrenders like on everyday basis, from 20 till 60. And for example, yesterday published a video of soldiers of 110th Mechanized Brigade who took a decision to surrender. The Russians published another video of storming in direction of Nivolskaya. If you remember, and as you can see, this map is updated, we know that as a result of clashes during the previous months, the Russians got the outskirts of Nivolskaya, and they're located right in front of this small settlement that Ukrainians uses for artillery brigades and for coordination of fire against the capital of DPR. And they got the outskirts. They're right in front of these positions. Let's return back to the Western sources map so we can try to calculate the distance between the Russians. So as you can see, according even to this map, the Russians is already right in front of Nivolsk. So in 500 meters, the Russians are located in 500 meters from the Ukrainian positions. And now the Russians are trying to attack this area from the south and to encircle this area by passing the minefields. I'm not sure whether it's a very good idea. The Russians do have possibilities to using distance methods to unmine this area, but anyway, this is very dangerous. There are a lot of trenches as well, but we see, and as we discussed, that possibly there is a very high chances that even by the end of this weekend, the Russians are going to take control over this small town as well. Now we're going to the south, and we're going to the South Donetsk area. There are no changes on the ground. Now, just a lot of updates are coming from Zaporozhye and Orekhov, Gulyai area. As you can see, there are a lot of icons, and mainly the Russians were concentrated to destroy the Ukrainian ammo depots, and as a result of those attacks, they destroyed at least 2 ammo depots, one of the 65th Mechanized Brigade in the Gulyai and the second one of 44th Artillery Brigade. As a result of those artillery duels and clashes along the combat line in this area, the Ukrainians lost 108 soldiers, 5 armored vehicles, and 1 artillery system. When talking about Kherson, there are no changes at all, but some Ukrainian sources published the video and some confirmations that the Ukrainians managed to cross the river in the vicinity of the Antonov Bridge and establish the bridgehead, let's say, on the Russian side of this area. So according to the Ukrainian sources, this area is under Ukrainian control. If you take a look at the Russian source map, this map is not updated. This map shows that this territory still remains under Russian control, but today there was some kind of confirmation from the Ukrainian side. I believe that this area is in the gray zone. I'm not sure that the Russians are able to hold the bridgehead on the lowland right in front of Ukrainian positions. It's just a waste of time. Furthermore, if you know that there is a town on the south of this area, Alyoshki, this one, and this is a very big town, and this town is very far from this position. Furthermore, you see there are a lot of rivers. The Ukrainians were saying that they achieved success by taking this bridgehead, but I ask myself, and are they going to do next? Even if they want to attack Alyoshki, first they need to cross at least few rivers, and for now I don't see that it's even possible from the Ukrainian side. Now let's go to deployment map, and I would like to discuss with you another topic. As you can see, the deployment map added another map on their website, and this very interesting map. This map shows let's say, how to call the grouping of Ukrainian forces. And let's start first. It's just informational piece of material, a piece of video. So as you can see, there is a northern part of Ukrainian army, this green line. It's strategical army, it's strategical grouping of troops of north. And there are two parts. The one on the west, it calls like Volyn troops, tactical grouping of troops Volyn, and the eastern one, tactical grouping of troops Sumy. So this is the northern part, the biggest one. It has the lowest number of forces, but it's the biggest according to the border and the part of the territory this strategical grouping of troops north is responsible for. There is a very small tactical group of Kharkiv, this one, Kharkiv tactical group. The next one is by the name of strategic grouping of troops Khortytsa. This is Khortytsa, and when talking about this area, there are two important bridgeheads, two important battles are in the responsibility of this strategical grouping Khortytsa. It's a battle for Bakhmut, Liman, and Kremenaya. So there are like three important battles. And Liman and Kremenaya is under responsibility of tactical grouping of troops Liman. Everything according to the Ukrainian structure. It's not the Russian structure, it's the Ukrainian structure. The next one is the also very big one, is the strategic tactical grouping of troops Tavria. This one and this area is responsible. It's some kind of analog of the Russian front line, South Donetsk and Zaporozhye area. But this one is bigger because this one includes the entire Donetsk front line, including I'm talking about the vicinity of Donetsk, also Gorlovka and New York-Torietsk agglomeration. The Russians, South Donetsk and Zaporozhye front line starts in Marinka. So the Russian one front line is less than the Ukrainian one. One more time. It's a strategic grouping of troops Tavria, and there is another small tactical grouping of troops Donetsk that's responsible for South Donetsk, still Torietsk, New York agglomeration. Another one is tactical grouping of troops Kherson. This area is responsibility from Energodar to Kherson itself. And the final one is Odessa strategical grouping of troops Odessa. There are no analog or opposite front line for the Russian side, but we can say that this front line doesn't have any combat line with the Russian side. So I believe that, let's say, Crimea and Crimea district is the opposite to this strategic grouping of troops of Odessa. So as you can see, there are at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strategical groups and 5 tactical groups under Ukrainian control. So as you can see, very interesting piece of information that give us more updates, more understanding of the situation in Ukraine. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.